This is the Economic Club of Florida, a distinguished platform for discussion of the major national issues of the day. On today's program, Clark Mica of the Institute of Makers of Explosives on the critical role that commercial explosives play in Florida's economy.
We use explosives to mine and quarry. Here in Florida, limestone is big. The limestone that is produced here in Florida, the majority of that is used to build Florida's infrastructure. And again, commercial explosives are essential to extract that material safely and securely, and again, to be able to provide infrastructure to grow Florida's economy.
Good day and welcome to the 580th in our series of distinguished speaker programs. I'm Harvey Bennett for the Economic Club of Florida. Our speaker this month brings the boom to the title of our program. Clark Mica is president of the Institute of Makers of Explosives, IME. This trade group, it represents U.S. manufacturers and distributors of commercial explosives. And it's out with a new economic impact study that highlights the critical role of these explosives in building the U.S. and Florida economies. Clark, welcome.
Thank you, Harvey, and it's great to be here with you today and the members of the Economic Club of Florida to talk about the importance of the commercial explosives industry. It's one of those things that we like to say our industry is one of the most taken for granted, but also most essential to our everyday lives. And so it's just an honor to be here today to talk about the results of our economic impact study and some of the findings there, and not just the economic benefit that we bring to both Florida and to the United States, but also the jobs and those essential things that we use in our everyday lives that explosives truly do make possible.
Well, let's get into that because it is an old industry, as old as pre-industrial revolution, I think, and tell us what sort of activities in commerce that explosives are used in and for, especially here in Florida.
You bet. Well, if you think about things you use every day, so we're here talking into microphones. Well, these microphones probably have copper wire that they're used to transmit the communications, right? That copper wire had to come from a mine somewhere, and commercial explosives are used to mine copper. And so that's just one example. Our cell phones, every mineral that goes into making a cell phone had to have been mined at some point. There's an old saying, if you can't grow it, it has to be mined. And that really is true. And to mine things, you have to use commercial explosives. We refer to explosives as the ultimate power tool. And really they are, because if you think about if we didn't have commercial explosives, how much manpower, how much diesel fuel, how much energy would it take to be able to extract the minerals, resources, materials that we use every day? I talked about technology. We look at the roads, the bridges, the infrastructure, the neighborhoods, the subdivisions, the cities, the skyscrapers. None of those things could be built without the aggregate materials that, again, we use explosives to mine and quarry. Here in Florida, limestone is big. The limestone that is produced here in Florida, the majority of that is used to build Florida's infrastructure. And again, commercial explosives are essential to extract that material safely and securely, and again, to be able to provide infrastructure to grow Florida's economy, especially with Florida's, I use the pun, booming population over the last few years. You have to have places for these folks to live. You have to have places for ways for them to be able to get to their homes, to get to their jobs. And again, commercial explosives make all of those things possible.
Yeah, plus a lot of, as you said, scientific manufacturing. Space is big here in Florida. You got a space connection.
We do. We do. A lot of people don't think about the incredible capabilities of our space program. What's been able to occur in Cape Canaveral. They're launching rockets, it seems like, weekly at this point. In order for those rockets not necessarily to launch, which is a controlled explosion in and of itself, if there was an emergency and they have to basically detonate the rocket, there are commercial explosives called linear shape charges that are attached just in case of emergency. Also, when the rockets that have different stages, when they have boosters that separate, there are explosive bolts that allow those different stages to separate at the exact time. So,
wow. And we've seen video of that on TV during these launches where each
Right.
stage of that's fascinating.
Yep.
Well, so this new report that your group, the Institute of Makers of Explosives, recently released, you're going to talk with the club in a few minutes about some of the major findings. Can you just give us a flavor for that?
You bet. Well, this is really the first of its kind study that we're really proud to have completed. And the findings are, I think, quite impressive. So the U.S. commercial explosives industry directly employs 15,500 workers and contributes about $7.5 billion to the economy. If you add in our both direct and supplied or induced jobs, you're talking about anywhere from 60 to 90,000 jobs and $19.5 billion to the U.S. economy. And again, that's just a direct economic impact. And then, all of those other industries, the mining and quarrying industry, construction and demolition, critical minerals, the space industry. I mean, think about all those downstream jobs that are created thanks to the use of commercial explosives.
Absolutely. Well, like many industries in Florida and America, yours is facing some challenges right now. What can you tell us what those are?
Sure. So our biggest challenge is really, safety and security is always our priority. But we frankly do a very good job of ensuring those things happen. But in terms of policy issues, right? So we, like other industries, have challenges finding qualified workers. And in that sense, our workers are unique in that we have to go through background checks conducted by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. A lot of people forget about that E at the end of ATF. Well, that's us. And so that in order to pass a background check, you have to, of course, pass a drug test. And that is getting more and more challenging with different states, treating, for example, marijuana differently. So we're having to navigate through those challenges. In addition, supply chain is a big issue for us. So we use different types of ingredients to make our commercial explosives products, TNT being one of them. A lot of people confuse, and you'll hear a little bit about this later, TNT and dynamite is the same thing. They are, in fact, completely different products. But TNT is an ingredient used to make what we call boosters. We don't manufacture any TNT in the United States. So not only is that a challenge for the commercial explosives industry, it's also a national security issue for our defense and military base, that we are reliant completely 100% on imports from other countries.
Wow. And that's an item that's been in the news recently with other industries, other raw materials as well, that we need to be manufacturing some of those key ingredients and key core builders of the economy, both civilian and military, here in the U.S., right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's such a big issue that Congress actually recognized that, and they have provided funding for the Department of Defense to, for the first time in over 2 decades, actually construct a new TNT plant. So we're excited about that. We know there'll be some challenges along the way in getting that done, but that is at least a positive step forward that we hope that the construction will begin soon. Because I'll tell you, if you look at Europe and what's going on with the Ukraine conflict, Finland just announced that they plan to construct a TNT plant in the next 2 years. So if Finland can do it, the United States of America certainly can do that as well.
There you go. Clark Mica, president of the Institute of Makers of Explosives. Thank you, sir. We're looking forward to hearing your upcoming presentation on Florida's booming economy.
Great. Thank you.
Now, here's Christopher Emanuel, Director of Government Relations at the University of Florida, with our formal introduction.
Good afternoon. It is my honor to introduce Clark Mica to the Economic Club of Florida. Clark serves as the president of the Institute of Makers of Explosives, the business association that's responsible for advocating for some of the largest commercial and just very fascinating explosive companies in the country. He's got a fascinating history that goes back to appointments in the W. Bush administration, deep Florida connections through the Mica family that we've already discussed, and a great understanding of Florida's economy through various roles in the fertilizer industry and in housing and urban development. We're very excited to hear not only about his background, but about the industry itself that relies and establishes and pushes so many important and essential commodities. I think we're going to hear a lot about the oil and gas industry, about the agricultural industry. We may even hear a little bit about space. And I think everyone's going to walk away with a greater appreciation for the manufacturers of these important products that the 21st century has been built on. Clark, thank you.
Have you ever thought about how explosives impact your daily life? Imagine a world where products could not be delivered to your home the day after you ordered them online or within a week or two.
Imagine those products costing multiple times more than they do today. Imagine those products or services that provide a huge convenience to your life were not available or affordable.
Like a car, refrigerator, cell phone, hairdryer. Or what if the electricity to run them was not available 24/7 or just too expensive to afford?
Imagine, for almost every product you touch, use, or come in contact with to be made possible, explosives were likely involved in making them available for you and your family.
Explosives play a key role in every aspect of our lives. Oil for the energy we use, metal for that car you drive, minerals for those products and medicines we consume are all made possible because of explosives and the explosives innovations that have occurred over the past 200 years.
Now imagine what your life would be like without the vast interconnecting highways and infrastructure that keep us connected, in a world with limited copper wire to connect our homes to the power grid. Our world as we know it today
has been made possible by explosives.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Chris, for the kind introduction, and thank you to Lizette and the entire team here at the Economic Club of Florida and you, the members, for having me. It really is an honor for me to be back in my home state, here in our state capital in Tallahassee, to speak with you today. So I am Clark Mica. Yes, I am one of the Micas. For those of you who know Dave, he is my uncle, and Dave Jr. is my cousin. So it's a pleasure to be here with you today. Of course, they thought so highly of this presentation that they left town. Typical Micas. So, but I am truly honored to be here with you. I like to say I have the privilege of having one of the best titles in all of Washington, D.C. You can be a congressman, you can be a senator, you can be a president or vice president, but there's only one president of the Institute of Makers of Explosives. So today I'm going to give you a brief history about commercial explosives and highlight the essential role that our industry plays, not just in growing the economies of Florida and the United States, but in truly making today's modern society possible. Before we do that, a little bit about the Institute of Makers of Explosives, or IME as we call it. So IME is the trusted voice of the commercial explosives industry. Our members include manufacturers, distributors, and users of commercial explosives. So much to the disappointment of probably many of you in the room and my uncle as well, we do not do defense or fireworks. We are the think big mining operations, oil and gas, quarrying, aggregates, again, all the things that you need to have a modern society. So last year, IME celebrated our 110th anniversary. It's pretty incredible. We were founded in 1913 at the direction of the federal government, who at the time, and understandably so, said, you guys are having way too many accidents, there's too many deaths, and you need to come together and create an organization that develops best practices for your industry. So we did that in 1913, and the first best practice, which are now called safety library publications, is called the American Table of Distances. So when you're storing commercial explosives, and the military actually uses this, you guys are probably familiar with the American Table of Distances, that was actually established by the Institute of Makers of Explosives back in 1913. So long history of safety and security in the industry. While our organization is in fact 110 years old, our mission remains the same. It is to promote the safe and secure manufacture, transport, distribution, and use of commercial explosives. And like other trade associations, we advocate on public policy issues. We provide technical expertise to our membership. We also develop educational tools and resources like those safety library publications that actually several of those have been adopted into federal regulation. So that just shows, I think, the depth and technical knowledge of and the quality of those materials that we're producing. We're also the voice of the commercial explosives industry. So we communicate with the public, we communicate with the media. As you can imagine, and when we go through this presentation a little bit further, our industry is incredibly technical. It's very complicated. So to be able to break down the good work that our men and women in our industry are doing, we have to serve as that communication outlet. And then last but not least, we also collect and disseminate industry data and statistics. We'll talk about the economic impact study we just completed, but we also collect tonnage. So our industry reports tonnage to our association, and then we provide that to the United States Geological Service. So you or anyone in the general public can go on their website and see how many tons of commercial explosives are consumed each year, and I would add safely and securely. So in terms of public policy, our issues are quite broad. A lot of things that people don't typically think about when you think of explosives, right? So first and foremost, safety and security. Those are paramount to what we do day in and day out. The safety and security of our employees and the communities in which our members operate is absolutely essential. We all hear about the social license to operate, and we see that as, again, being critical. So we have to make sure that our operations are safe and secure. Supply chain. Supply chain is an interesting issue. So there are all types of explosives out there, high explosives, low explosives, and we are challenged right now with getting access to high explosives, in particular TNT, HMX, and RDX. I see heads nodding. Any of you that were in the military know what these are. Unfortunately, we don't manufacture any TNT in the United States anymore. That not only puts the commercial industry at a competitive disadvantage, it puts our military at a national security risk. We are reliant completely on imports of TNT. HMX and RDX are two other high explosives that we use primarily in the oil and gas industry, but a little bit in the commercial side as well. And there is one plant in the United States that manufactures that, right? So think about military, commercial industry relying on one plant for one high explosive and completely imported for the others. It's not a great situation, but it's something that, again, we're in DC to advocate for, to make sure that those things are addressed. Transportation and infrastructure, both moving product, making sure that we have the right regulations in place to move explosives safely. And on infrastructure, it's advocating for those dollars to actually go towards infrastructure projects. Think about all the repaving that's going on. Think about new roads that need to be built to accommodate all the new people that have moved to Florida. Well, those aggregates, that limestone, that material has to come from somewhere, and it starts with explosives. Energy and environment, again, we play a critical role in the oil and gas industry, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But we want to make sure we're advocating for balanced energy policies, right? It's not an either or, it's all of the above. We're also still heavily engaged in coal mining. It continues to trend downward, but I think if we've seen the situation in Europe in the last couple of years where their natural gas supplies have been cut off at one time or another, who would have thought that Germany would be restarting coal-fired power plants? There are a couple things you need to have a modern society or a successful society, and that's energy, water, and food, right? Moving down workforce, this isn't really unique to our industry, except for the fact that to handle or possess commercial explosives in the United States, you have to have a background check conducted by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. Never forget the E at the end of ATF. They always leave it off. But so that puts us in a whole different level, right? We're trying to find laborers out there to work, and they're not fun jobs. It's hard work. It's early mornings, it's late nights, it's heavy equipment, it's dirty. But in addition to that, you have to have a background check. So we have quite a challenge in finding qualified workers there. And then innovation is of course always a priority, finding safer, more effective, more efficient sources of commercial explosives. So that's a little bit about IME. How many of y'all recognize this picture? Yeah? Okay. Well, how many of you think this is what the commercial explosives industry looks like today? Sorry to disappoint you, but that in fact is not what the commercial explosives industry looks like. In fact, the plunger, that's what the machine's called that Mr. Wile E. Coyote is pushing down on, those are pretty much used for photo ops. Now most of our work is done either at the click of a mouse or the press of a button on an electronic board. So again, sorry to disappoint you, but that's just not today's industry. So before we get into today's industry, I want to give you a little, hopefully brief background about our history and how we came to be where we are today. So you may recognize the gentleman up here on the right, probably not the one on the left, but that is in fact a Swedish chemist by the name of Alfred Nobel. Yes, that Alfred Nobel, who invented dynamite in 1866. Having lost a brother in an incident involving nitroglycerin, which was used prior to that, and a fairly unstable product in certain environments, Nobel made it his life's mission to develop a more stable explosive product that could easily and safely be transported, stored, and used. Patented in 1867, Nobel's invention of dynamite forever changed the modern world. The gentleman on the left was a German chemist named Joseph Wilbrand. He's credited with discovering TNT in 1863. So when I said TNT and dynamite, they're completely different products. They're very commonly confused to be the same thing. They're actually different products discovered at different times. So the use of TNT didn't really take hold until the 1900s, so think early World War I-ish. And while dynamite was truly a game changer in terms of a modern society, the use of dynamite as a weapon forever haunted Nobel. In fact, it haunted him so much that he decided to leave his fortunes made from the sale of dynamite behind to endow what we today know as the Nobel Prizes. And that is, in fact, why there is a Nobel Peace Prize as one of those. So in terms of creating a modern society, dynamite was absolutely instrumental in clearing the path to build the Transcontinental Railroad. That's the picture here on the right. Imagine the opportunities that made available, again, thanks to explosives. The picture on the right here is of Mount Rushmore. So Mount Rushmore took 14 years to complete, and in fact was completed in, I believe, October 1941, just before the attack of Pearl Harbor on December 6th. So again, 14 years to complete. They hadn't planned to use dynamite. They were originally using kind of a chisel and carving method that, could you imagine how long that would have taken? So the structure, again, was blasted with dynamite. 14 years, not a single worker lost their life in that project. Absolutely incredible. Again, thanks to the invention of dynamite, safer, more stable, and able to use it in these types of situations. And if you ever go out there, has anyone been to Mount Rushmore? Yeah. Have you been to the museum? They don't help our cause because they actually have a plunger in there that you can push to demonstrate the blasting. It's a really well done museum if you ever have a chance to go see it. So closer to home, some of you may recognize this. I actually labeled it so you have to know what it is. But dynamite was used to clear the path for construction of the transformational Flagler Railroad. In fact, if you drive down A1A, just south of Key Largo, if you have Google Maps on, you'll see a little dot on the map called Dynamite Docks. That was where they imported the dynamite via ship to continue blasting all the way down to Key West. So So kind of a fun historical fact about commercial explosives in Florida. So while dynamite and TNT were both safer and more stable than nitroglycerin, industry is always looking to innovate towards the development of newer and safer products. So this gentleman here is an American chemist by the name of Melvin Cook. In 1956, he discovered what are called slurry explosives, which involved mixing ammonium nitrate with aluminum powder and fuel oil, also known as ANFO. And unfortunately, you've heard ANFO in bad terms, but it is also a very safe and effective commercial explosive. So the discovery of slurries and eventually ammonium nitrate emulsions, which are also used today, the stability of these products is such that ammonium nitrate emulsions can be, there are tests out there that can be shot at with a .50 caliber rifle from within 200 yards and it won't detonate. I mean, it's just incredible that the safety and the technology and the innovation that has taken place in our industry over the years, thanks to this gentleman here and his foresight into creating better products. Today, approximately 85% of all commercial explosives consumed in the United States are ammonium nitrate based. In contrast, there's only one remaining dynamite plant in all of North America. And I mentioned earlier that we don't actually manufacture any TNT. So that brings us to today's industry, which involves manufacturers, distributors, and users of commercial explosives. So the users, we call them blasters. You'll hear me refer to blasting or blasters. The actual people that are doing the blast are referred to as blasters. So as noted, today's products are far safer and much more stable than those used in the past. Here's a quick look through some of the common products that we use. So this is a detonator connected to an electric wire that goes into a system. You can hook hundreds of these up at a time and set them off within milliseconds of one another depending on the shot. And these are just the different type of detonators, but you can see the innovation over time from what we call non-electric or shock tube all the way up to electronic and now wireless. So that, again, that innovation continues throughout time. Safer, faster, more efficient ways of getting more material out of the ground using less product. So here you'll see the yellow bag there that's what ANFO looks like. That's ammonium nitrate fuel oil. It's usually a pink color. It's a little prill. I mean, you can pick it up in your hand. It won't actually hurt you. And then we call those chubs, the plastic tubes. They actually use sausage casing machines to make these. It's fascinating when you go out and see the plants. But these are what are commonly used in mining operations and quarries. Then here we see boosters. So again, I mentioned that product, the ANFO, the ammonium nitrate emulsions, are very stable. And you have to sensitize them, and then in order to even get them to detonate, you have to have a booster. And I'm not telling you anything you can't read online, so don't think I'm giving any secrets out. Then here we have detonating cord. So this material, it looks like your speaker wire, right? It's wrapped in cord. Except on the inside it has high explosive, usually PETN, and that cord can detonate at a speed of over 5,000 feet per second. So think about that. It's pretty incredible. These tubes here are kind of interesting. So these are used to measure seismic activity, primarily in the oil and gas industry. So if you're going out and you're getting ready to, drill down a well, you want to measure the activity within the earth there. They actually use explosives to do that. These here are what are called shape charges. The longer ones are called linear shape charges. The round is also linear. These are used. Did everyone see the unfortunate incident that occurred in Baltimore where the ship hit the bridge? So that was actually linear shaped charges were placed at particular spaces on this bridge to get it off of the ship. If you saw what happened, it was incredible. The the roadway was still laid across the top of the boat, but they couldn't move it. So they had to get this off the ship to be able to refloat the vessel and reopen Baltimore, which is one of the largest ports on all of the East Coast. So closer to home here in Florida, linear shape charges are also used on many of the rockets that you see launched from Cape Canaveral. And in the old days, and current too, if there is more than one rocket, now SpaceX goes up and comes down, right? But the ones that have the boosters on the side, well, those boosters have to have a way to separate from the main rocket. And there are explosive bolts attached to that, so they can separate at the right time. And then in case of emergency, they actually have shape charges placed in specific places. So should something go wrong, they can actually detonate the rocket. That's commercial explosives as well. So we also use commercial explosives and shape charges for demolition, right? This is the old Bayway Bridge in St. Pete that was demolished, again, using linear charges. And then last but not least, this is a video of the DeVille, am I pronouncing this correctly, in Miami? DeVille Beach Resort, famous for hosting the Beatles when they would come to the United States. This building was taken down in 2022, and we'll just show you a quick clip. So just imagine the engineering that has to go into that. You know, not only knowing where to place these charges to get the building to fall the way you want it to, but to protect the surrounding areas. Now, this is Miami Beach. This is not the middle of nowhere. There are a lot of people around, a lot of buildings, a community, and the precision that is involved in getting this building or these buildings to fall that way is just absolutely incredible. Again, all made possible through the use of explosives. So here on the screen is another type of shape charge. These are conical charges. So these charges are used in the oil and gas industry. And what you see here on the screen is a perforating gun. So you can see the charges. It's a steel tube. The charges are placed in, and then that blue wire is actually the detonating cord. And these charges, unlike you would think, actually detonate from the bottom out, right? So they're shooting, where you see the copper color, they're shooting in that direction out. And that is in order to perforate the casing. So when you're drilling a oil and gas well, right, they drill down, and then they'll put a steel tube or casing down within that well, thousands of feet below the Earth's surface. But in order to get from that casing out to the rock formation, you have to perforate that steel casing, and in some cases through the cement that's also around that. So think about, you are, miles underground. You've got this steel tube. Well, how the heck do you get out to the oil and gas reserves? You used perforating guns. And so they range anywhere from about 2 feet up to 20 feet. They're used both onshore and offshore operations. But I tell you this because how many of you guys, there's probably a few, but how many of you actually are familiar with this? I mean, think about where our energy comes from. A couple over here. We take so much for granted, and this is a great example of, again, the essential nature of commercial explosives and the value that we can bring to society. So once those guns are taken out again to the well, this is a wireline truck. They're attached to basically a thousands of foot long cable put down into that casing and again perforated, and they can do everything from 1 2-foot gun or a 20-foot gun to one at a time. So if you have a strand of 40 guns, they can detonate them exactly where they want along the string. It's just an incredible, again, the engineering involved is amazing. And this is just a test of one. I think this was about probably a 6-foot gun. And that's actually buried in water. So you can imagine the force and the power there. But again, very precise. I mean, we're talking about, in some cases less than an inch wide perforation that can go several inches deep into the rock formation. And that's not actually the fracking, right? That's just creating the ability to frack. So once that happens, these perforating guns are actually pulled out, and then they put the fluids in to create that upward flow of oil and gas. So it is quite an extensive process that, I think most people think you just put a drill in the ground and you hit gold and it starts flowing up. Couldn't be further from the truth. So moving on to where the bulk of explosives are used, which is mining and quarrying. It's really pretty simple. Without commercial explosives, you don't have the aggregates and limestone to build the homes, roads, bridges, and other infrastructure, again, essential to modern society. Long before a blast is heard or felt, extensive planning and preparation by one or more blasting professionals occurs. In fact, the amount of preparation and engineering that goes into planning a blast is absolutely incredible. I recently visited a quarry outside of Washington, D.C. that provides a lot of the aggregates for the roads in the area. They told us it takes 7 days just to plan one shot. So think about that. It's everything from site prep to drilling to ensuring that you've got all of the safety aspects put in place, notifying your neighbors, being a good steward. Just a lot of work that goes into that. In Florida, we're regulated by the State Fire Marshal's office. State Fire Marshal, you have to be licensed. All blasts must be monitored by a seismologist and can only occur during daylight hours Monday through Friday. So no blast, no fun on the weekends, sorry. Only with special permission. So some of you, is anybody here from South Florida? Miramar? I know we've got some issues down there that we're working through. The state of Florida sets the limit at 0.5 inches per second for vibration. That is the equivalent to a train passing by your house. Now it'll rattle maybe for a little bit, but it typically goes through. It's not going to cause your house to fall down. It's not going to cause, structural damage. But there are actually limits set by the state as to how much vibration we can cause in the industry. And those are, again, monitored. South Florida actually has a unique situation where you can go online and see every single blast and what the vibration level was. So we're, again, working through that. But as the industry people, from Washington, our job really is to educate, right? And to make sure that those communities that do have concerns, they understand that these are we are operating well within the legal limits, and we're doing everything we can to ensure that, again, the communities are safe and that we're able to provide those essential materials to the community that relies on them. So how does this all work? Well, pictured here is a bulk truck. A bulk truck, so this is typical of a mine or quarry site. So in the back there you have the tank with ammonium nitrate emulsions and the hose coming off, and that's pumped down. The lighter sand piles are what's left of the holes that are drilled, and then you'll fill those holes with the ammonium nitrate emulsions. You have a booster, a detonator, and then you say, yes, we still yell fire in the hole. You'll yell fire in the hole, and you'll do your job. So this is a quarry down in South Florida. You can again see the precision that goes into that, and the timing is just incredible. Here's from a different angle. Pretty impressive. Again, all this material is going out to build the homes, roads, bridges, all the things that we rely on here in the state of Florida. Brightline, skyscrapers. My favorite, I-4. Also known as the parking lot that goes between Orlando and Tampa. And of course, housing, right? We have to have housing for everyone that lives here, that wants to move here, and you can't do that without all of these materials. So the whole reason I'm here at the Economic Club is to talk economics, right? So this year we were really excited to complete the first ever economic impact study of the commercial explosives industry in the United States. 15,500 direct jobs, 60,000 direct and induced jobs. $7.5 billion to the economy, direct impact. Over 19 billion direct and indirect. That's pretty awesome if you think about it. And that's just the economic impact. Did you see the second part of that? So here's the economic impact. But this is what I think is so critical. $121 billion mining and critical minerals industry. We talk about all the new technology, the green economy. We don't care if it's fossil fuels or green. You need us for everything, right? If you want to make lithium batteries, you got to mine the lithium, and you have to use explosives to do that. You want to build windmills. You use explosives not only to get the material out to build the windmill, you have to use it to prepare the site, because those things go down 20, 30, 40, 50 feet to build the foundations. So, again, quarry and construction industry, $2.2 trillion, not possible without explosives. And again, the energy industry, oil and gas, wind, solar, geothermal, you need explosives for all of that. Closer to home here in Florida, you can see we have a direct economic impact of about $132 million. When combined with supplied and induced, that comes out to about $431 million. Jobs, 452 direct industry jobs doesn't seem like a lot, but again, think about what those jobs create. So 1,700 total supplied and induced jobs. But these are all things that are so critical to our modern way of life. And I would just venture to guess, I hope that by attending today's luncheon that you learned something. Hopefully it wasn't too boring and too in the weeds, but as you can see, I think you have to understand both the history of where we came from and then to where we are now, to an incredibly safe and secure industry. We actually tried, so we went to to OSHA, and we said, we'd really like to form a safety and health alliance with you guys. They actually came back and said, you're kind of too safe, we don't need one. Imagine that. I mean, that's something I wear with pride, right? To represent an industry that is so safe that OSHA says we don't need a safety and health alliance. Pretty awesome record to stand on. And if you think about the millions of tons of explosives that are consumed each year, rarely do you hear about anything in the news. I will say, most of the explosive incidents or things you hear about in the news these days are IEDs. They do not involve commercial explosives. So make sure you read the article. We have to do a lot of correcting. So anyhow, with that, I know we want to have time for Q&A. So thank you all so much for having me today. Again, I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and just an honor to be here with you.
So if you have okay, Larry's already figured it out. Lisette will have the mic for all questions.
Well, first of all, thank you for an outstanding presentation. I am totally overwhelmed by the level of training that is required to be able to do explosives with that level of precision. I've never seen a bachelor's in explosives, but I guess maybe they exist out there. But what kind of training? Is it all engineering, is there certain colleges of study? Is there places that are best at training people to do this kind of work? Where do they learn how to do this?
Yes, thank you for that softball question. I'm actually serious. So, and I can't take credit for this, but just prior to me joining IME in March of 22, they had decided to create a new membership category for academic partners. So we actually have 3 universities, Missouri University of Science and Technology, Colorado School of Mines, and University of Kentucky, who all offer engineering degrees in either mining or explosives. And so we're hoping to grow that program to also welcome in some of our national labs that, Sandia, Los Alamos, all those labs you've probably heard of. They do a lot of work still in explosives. And so it's not just on the R&D side, it's also on the talent pipeline. Finding kids to get into explosives. I I tell this story. We have a gentleman on staff who is probably one of the most renowned experts in commercial explosives. And his mother tells this story. He was either going to jail or to college, and he ended up going in the right direction. So,
Mr. Mica, thank you for your time. You mentioned building out one facility in North America, creating dynamite.
yes.
Correct?
Yep.
So, presuming that somebody had the financing they needed, is it all regulatory barriers that are keeping us from expanding our capacity?
It is. Specifically with TNT and even HMX RDX, the higher explosives, the waste streams that come off of the manufacturing of these products it's nasty stuff. It's not a secret. So much so that EPA essentially has a memo out there that says you'll never build another TNT plant in the United States until you figure out how to deal with what's called red water. But the unfortunate result of that is we are reliant. So globally, TNT, the big producers are Ukraine, take that off the map, Poland, which we rely heavily on, Turkey, we're starting to get some from there just because it's one of the only sources, and then China, Russia, and a little bit out of South Korea. So you could probably take half of those suppliers off the top, right? And we're left with scrap. So we're hoping, again, DOD has funding. They're in the process of, they call it a sources sought that's since been closed. So they're reviewing the proposals, and we're hoping that they do come back with an award to build a new plant in the United States. But again, DOD can go as far as they can. It's still going to have to go through the environmental review process. So that will be something that we will definitely be engaged on.
Follow-up question. How does IME help the state of Florida if and when that process goes through, get that plant or get that facility?
Well, first you have to be an IME member. No. In all seriousness, I think the plant, well, I mentioned there's one HMX RDX plant, and it's in Kingsport, Tennessee. Again, I'm not telling you anything you can't look up online. There is a strong likelihood that it ends up there just because they've already gone through the permitting for those other plants. But I do know of other companies, particularly our members, that would be very interested in constructing the plant. But again, it's $500 million in funding, which is probably about a third of what you need to actually build a plant. So you're going to have to come up with some private capital. And the thing is, the military, this has been an interesting learning experience for me, not having worked much in the DoD space. They actually do have to go through a cost-benefit analysis for their sources or suppliers, right? So what they're thinking about is, yes, right now there are a lot of conflicts going on, and all of the money that's being spent on Ukraine, for example, right? Most of that money is actually going to restock our own supplies. Ukraine's getting our leftovers. That's not, it's reported here and there, but Ukraine is getting basically our old supplies. And then in turn, we are developing and manufacturing new stuff. It's actually been pretty good for both the commercial and the defense side. But DOD is looking at this as, yes, there's current conflicts going on, but what do we think the market's going to look like long term for these materials? Because we can't build a TNT plant and then not have a need for it. That's not a good use of taxpayer dollars, right? So they're looking at us to say, well, how much would your industry be willing to commit to utilizing? So it's that partnership and that transfer of information. But frankly, we weren't even on their map until we reached out back in February. So another example of why we are where we are. Any other questions? One over here.
So you mentioned it, but you didn't explain. What's the difference between dynamite and TNT? Are they mutually exclusive? What's the usage?
Sure. So dynamite it's more of a product, right? It's more of a finished product. I mean, they refer to dynamite as a stick of dynamite, and it's no longer. I guess it used to be in red tubes. They now use yellow. And again, there's only one company. You can go online and look it up. It's Dyno Nobel in Missouri. they still make dynamite just because of all the inventions of these new, safer products. It's just not used as much. It's an incredibly powerful tool, but mostly used in really hard rock situations. But in terms of the difference between the two, it's a different chemical composition. TNT is actually used not exclusively as an explosive per se in the commercial industry, but an ingredient. So those boosters that I was showing you, those boosters will have, TNT, PETN, some type of high explosive in them, but it's not used as a raw product in and of itself. It's kind of interesting. It's like a yellow, flaky, kind of looks like cornflakes. Look at my military guys over here. This is about the best way to describe it.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Clark.
You've been listening to Clark Mica, President of the Institute of Makers of Explosives, speaking before the Economic Club of Florida on June 25th, 2024 in Tallahassee, Florida. For more information on the Institute of Makers of Explosives, visit ime.org. The Economic Club of Florida promotes interest and enlightenment on important economic, political, and social issues of the day. To learn more, including how to become a member, visit our website at economic-club.com. This program was recorded at the Champions Club at Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida.